One consequence of the U.S.'s chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan has been the poor security along its borders. Overwhelmed with keeping its grip on power, the Taliban have done little to stop militants from freely crossing into Pakistan. That has fueled violence in the country's southwest province of Balochistan, where militants have been fighting for decades to carve out a separate state. A recent attack there left at least 7 Pakistani soldiers dead. Hadia Al-Alawi reports.
A growing tide of violence in the troubled Pakistani region of Balochistan. More than 40 civilians and soldiers were killed last month as insurgents intensified their attacks. The newly formed Balochistan Nationalist Army claimed responsibility last week for a series of attacks on state security forces.
Terrorists carried out a big attack in Naushki and Panjgur, but our great security forces foiled the attack. 9 terrorists were killed in Naushki and 4 soldiers martyred. In Panjgur, 6 terrorists were killed and terrorists were thrown out of both places.
It came just 1 week after 10 Pakistani soldiers were killed at a checkpoint in the town of Kech in Balochistan. The Balochistan Nationalist Army is believed to have split from other Baloch militant groups that have been fighting the government for decades, demanding a separate state. Balochistan is Pakistan's largest but poorest province. Making up more than 40% of the country, it borders Iran and Afghanistan. The latest violence started hours before Prime Minister Imran Khan arrived in Beijing for the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. The attacks appeared to be a reminder that Chinese investments in the region were at risk. Beijing is investing heavily in the area as part of its Belt and Road Initiative. A $64 billion project known as the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is upgrading infrastructure, power and transport links between China's Xinjiang region and Pakistan's Gwadar. Khan and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang signed an agreement to start the second phase of the project during his visit, despite increased concerns for the security of Chinese workers. In August last year, a suicide bombing targeted a vehicle carrying Chinese nationals at the port of Gwadar in Balochistan, injuring a worker and killing 2 Pakistanis. A Baloch militant group claimed responsibility for the attack. A month earlier, 9 Chinese workers were killed in an explosion that targeted a bus on its way to the Dasu hydropower plant site in northern Pakistan, which is also part of China's Corridor project. And with a power vacuum forming along the border with Afghanistan, where the Taliban seems unable or unwilling to stop militants from crossing, analysts warn that violence in the region could get worse. Hadia Al-Alawi, Straight Talk.
And to take a closer look at the latest surge in violence, I'm joined now from Karachi by Huma Baqai. She is a current affairs analyst and associate professor at IBA in Karachi, and Amir Zia, journalist and editor-in-chief of Bold Media Group. A warm welcome to you both. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. Huma, what's behind the latest flare of violence in Pakistan's Balochistan province, and are these terrorist groups emboldened by the chaotic situation across the border in Afghanistan?
Well, there is no one simple answer to that. Balochistan has been a troubled province for a very long time, but the recent upsurge in violence is because of a multiple of factors. One is that low-key Baloch insurgent groups, which are comparatively new, have all come together, and they seem to be working in collaboration with Tehreek-e-Taliban in Pakistan, which is a very, very unlikely alliance because ideologically speaking, they're very different. There are several views here. One, of course, is that they are working from Afghanistan, but a more prevalent view is that now they can't work from Afghanistan, so they've been pushed back into Pakistan, and all they have to do is now fight. That's their only mode of survival, and that is why their mode of attacks have also changed. They used to be very hit-and-run kind of attacks that Balochistan had experienced in the past. This time they've gone head-on, they've been frontal, and the arms at their disposal, which were actually displayed on Pakistani media yesterday, it's a bit of a it's a bit of a complexity as to how do they have access to those arms, because those arms are largely American arms left over in Afghanistan.
Yes.
One perspective is also this, that they perhaps have some facilitation from Iran, where perhaps the Iranian state may not be facilitating them, but the Iranian state is also not stopping them. So I think the upshrug in violence in Balochistan this time is far more complicated than what we've seen in the past.
Yes.
Right now, the strategy with the government is kinetic. We want to first make sure that we dismantle their cells, we
Yes.
give them a hard pushback, and then perhaps move forward.
Yes. So, Amir, as Huma just mentioned, I mean, there are no more hit and run assaults. This latest attack, if I'm not mistaken, continued for about 16 hours. What does this tell us about the increased capabilities of these groups, and how have they strengthened that much?
The timing of the attacks are very important. I mean, they happened at a time when Prime Minister Imran Khan was in China, and Pakistan was trying to expedite all the stalled, CPEC projects once again and give them a new life. So perhaps, and as you know, that Balochistan is very important for CPEC. It's not just because of the Gwadar port, because all the highways crosses through Balochistan and connecting China and the key ports of Pakistan across. So that's why I think that the timing is very important. The insurgents wanted to give a very solid message to the Chinese that they are unsafe over here. So that's why there was a desperate attempt. And what we have seen, that there has been a change in tactics. If you remember that just a year back, what was happening is that mostly settler workers, immigrant workers were being targeted. Now, attacking the security forces is relatively a new phenomena which has started for the last 14, 15 months, 16 months. The workers are attacked. We see that there's a lot of backlash against the Baloch insurgents. So when they target security forces, there's a small segment of liberal elite in Pakistan and anti-Pakistan forces. They take on to the social media and try to portray it as a broad movement. Although I would say that despite they were big attacks, but yet it is a very fringe movement.
Yes.
This insurgency. So it is not a broad base. It is not a popular insurgency. And another factor is that the attacks have occurred in the border areas, as Huma Baqai has just mentioned, that both these areas, Noshki and Panjgur, they borders Afghanistan and Iran, close to the borders.
Yes.
So again, it was difficult. It was easier for them to move from one place to another and kind of go for the attacks. Yes.
So, Uma, you said Iran is not stopping those terrorist organizations. So is this a failure on the Taliban side to uphold their commitment not to allow Afghanistan soil to be used against any other state, or is this situation is already out of control?
I would not say the situation is out of control, largely because I think the Pakistani forces are on top of things. This operation took 16 hours because the Pakistani forces exercised strategic restraint to make sure that civilian deaths do not happen, because this was in the midst of a town. And that was one of the reasons it took so long. But having said this, I think that to blame it entirely on the Afghan government right now would not be correct, because they're facing a lot of challenges. I don't think it's a monolith entity. I don't think they're in complete control of the situation. But having said this, I would also like to point out that the safe havens that they had in Afghanistan have crumpled. For example, there were 66 training camps for Baloch insurgents in Afghanistan. There were about 18 or so in Iran. And moreover, another country that cannot be ignored while we are talking about this, because the intelligence, the machines that they picked up, I don't even know what you call them, actually, and what they've deciphered indicates that there were messages that were coming from India.
Yes.
So, and both Ajit Doval and Prime Minister Modi are on record publicly stating that they will target Balochistan. With the situation in Kashmir becoming more precarious by the day, it suits them perfectly to attack Afghanistan. They are anti.
Yes.
They want to exploit the insurgency and also CPEC. So I think a lot of things sort of come together here, which has sort of given this violence that you see in Balochistan and Uptik. It had
Yes.
boiled down in 2019. It's sort of upstruck again.
Okay, so Amir, you've just mentioned that China is heavily invested in this region, especially for its Belt and Road initiative. What could China and Pakistan jointly do, for example, to help the Afghan government, which is overwhelmed by social and economic problems gripping the country? Because we also know that China and Pakistan are mulling that maybe to include Afghanistan into this China-Pakistan economic corridor. Is this viable under these circumstances?
First of all, I will second what Huma has said, that Afghan Taliban are not fully in control. So there is a lot of territories from where militants and those entire Pakistan element, they are using those places. Similarly, the Iranian government is maybe not supporting or patronizing those forces, but still Iranian soil is being used. Saying that what Pakistan and China can do, I mean, of course, already both the countries are committed in a way that they want stability and peace in Afghanistan. At the same time, they're asking for humanitarian aid that is already, I think, being rolled out both from Pakistan and China. And at the same time, if going forward, and Chinese are also investing a lot in Afghanistan. So, I mean, yes, there's always a big, huge possibility that once things stabilizes over here and also in Afghanistan, so it can also be connected, because there's a old dream of Pakistan to connect to Central Asia, crossing through Afghanistan. So that is a viable, and if China can pitch in that. But, saying this is easy, there are a lot of hostile forces which do not want CPEC to succeed, which do not want that the Afghan government should, Afghan Taliban government should stabilize. And they want the Afghan Taliban to fail, and the fallout of that failure should come on Pakistan. So that's what many of the hostile countries are trying, including India. And some of the, I would say, the Western countries are also trying to do that, to upset the Afghan Taliban government. And of course, the Pakistan is going to take the direct brunt of whatever happens in Afghanistan if things again go out of control, or a new round of civil war starts over there.
Yes.
So the situation is precarious in Afghanistan, and it is in the interest of Pakistan, China, and all the other regional countries that stability should return to Afghanistan, and Afghan people should be allowed to, decide their own future rather than being dictated from any other capital, say from Washington, New Delhi, or any other. All the decisions Afghan take, they take on their own.
Yes. So, Huma, from what you've said, I understand that these militant groups have kind of a backing of India, the US, and Iran. Do you think they're being used as tools to counter Chinese influence? And if so, could this succeed?
We can't exclude that possibility, because we know that we are almost everybody's talking about a new Cold War unfolding, and unfolding in this particular region. Balochistan is the obvious target to sabotage China-Pakistan economic corridor. India is almost committed to do that. It has allocated funds for the same. But just if I may add to what just Amir said, there is a conference lined up in China end of March, which is neighbors of Afghanistan. It is geared towards doing what they can, not just to address the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, but also to make sure that ISIS or other such outfits that may be gaining strength because of the problems that exist in Afghanistan should be countered.
Yes.
So I think China has a very important role to play there, and Pakistan is working with China, because peace in Afghanistan is intrinsically linked to peace in Pakistan, and moreover to its economic growth and prosperity if it is hinged upon China-Pakistan economic corridor. So I think there's a huge convergence of interest between China and Pakistan to get peace in Afghanistan.
All right, Huma, Amir, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.
Thank you.